Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today I'm joined by 6 of ACSOM's contributors to look back on yet another day of disappointment. Kevin Graham, I'm going to come to you first of all, but before I do that, what I would say is your camera's playing up a wee bit, but that's fine. Anyone who looks at that performance today, right, and tries to pin their hat, and I'm going to be talking about people post-match in terms of their interviews, pin their hat on a couple of missed sitters and a missed penalty, are the same kind of people that are trying to justify the Dubai trip. I mean, these are the same guys that all season were saying, but we've got 2 games in hand. Yes, and if we beat Rangers a couple of times, stop overreacting. That out there today, Kevin Graham, was absolute powder puff from Celtic.
It was in the first half. It was definitely in the first half. And I get what you're saying, and I do not back the Dubai trip one little bit, but there was a bit of frustration in that second half because we did have the chances, and that's not going to take away at the fact that we were beaten by the better football team, the better coach football team, the team that's got the better culture in the dressing room. And John Kennedy wasn't going to change the culture in that dressing room, and I think that was proved by the penalty kick and the lackadaisical effort by some of the teams. But we did slightly improve in the second half, but it's like putting more hot water in your bath after you've already shat it. I mean, it's like a waste of time. It's a waste of time showing that effort in the second half now, after you've had that first half.
I don't know if these laughs are knowing grins because you've been in that situation. It's certainly not a predicament I've ever had to face, Kevin, but thanks for that visual. John Paul Connors comes in to say disinterested, disappointing, disparaging, disgusting. Anthony Haggerty, would you agree with all of the above?
Yeah, Rangers gave us a ball in the second half, we couldn't score. Bobby Madden gave us a penalty, we couldn't score. You know what I mean? The damage was done after 1-0. The team, I said in the first half, the team didn't believe they could win after that. 36-year-old was the best player in the park. Steve Davis tells you everything you need to know. As Kev touched upon there, that culture in that dressing room was spot on at the minute. A 36-year-old giving his all, scoring an overhead kick inside 10 minutes, set the tone for another Rangers performance where they just kind of, they got 2 goals in front and it was job done. Celtic huffed and puffed the second half. They did take chances, but we're wasteful. But just say if you're clinging on to that hope, then you are reading this wrong. I mean, absolutely I thought it was pretty gutless and spineless, to be honest.
Interestingly enough, Jock Sporn agrees with you, Tony.
Well, there you go. They showed up in the second half a wee bit because they had to mount some kind of effort because they were 2 down. But you try to tell me Rangers were bothered. They weren't at any stage, and I didn't think at any stage that Celtic were actually going to score and haul themselves back into it. And I'm not even angry. It's lamentable that this season it's just become something that we've come to accept. And it's that kind of performance is just utterly unacceptable. We move on to tomorrow and hopefully better news with our CEO coming in and a new regime and a new start. And for this moment in time, you just have to take your dumps, take your medicine.
JP, I did a podcast one weekend on A Celtic State of Mind talking about the rebuild, talking about the personnel that may be leaving Celtic Park. When you look at a performance like that today, when, I don't know about the rest of you, but when Rangers went 1-up, I didn't believe that Celtic had it in them. I didn't believe that we had the guts to get back into the game certainly at half-time, looking at the scoreline of 2-0, I didn't believe Celtic were going to pull that back to 2 each. Absolutely not. But in the past, during this period of domination, particularly during the treble years, I did. So what's changed, JP?
That's a big question. Loaded. I honestly think that the players have just run out of steam. I think it's ran its course. Somebody texted me and said this team is disjointed, but I would go further than that and say the club is disjointed. And right now the club is disjointed because no one knows who's doing X job, Y job, who's signing players, who's letting Klimala go. Like no one knows anything, and you've got this sort of transitional period now that's about to begin with a handover to Dominic Mackay. And thank God that there is obviously steps being taken to clean up the mess. And if the mess involves a lot of those players that started the game today going for whatever fees we get for them, whether they're exorbitant fees, the fees that we might have expected maybe a year or two ago, or not because of Brexit, COVID, all the other things that have been thrown into the mix. If that's what's going to happen, then so be it. I won't lose any sleep tonight if any of those, well, most of those players leave. 3 of them are on loan anyway. So there you go.
It's time to clean the bath and hopefully find a couple of bath bombs next Christmas.
I hope you put more in bath bombs. I was thinking more kind of bleach, Kev, for the type of baths you have. Now, Lawrence, on the point that JP has made, you're looking sometimes after a game like that, and you do see a lot of comments. William Pearson has been watching Celtic for 50 years, and he doesn't believe any of them are worthy of wearing the hoops. Now, my biggest kind of gripe on this situation is, where did it all go wrong? Because you go from winning a treble to winning absolutely hee-haw, to use a good Scottish term. How many of that team today are going to be playing for Celtic next season for you, Lawrence Conley?
Tell you what, I wouldn't have Diego in the hoops again, or Eddie for that matter. Diego, just criminal for professional football, loses the ball, throws his hands up, stops playing. There's a game going on, get back into position. Eddie, all about Eddie again. Near the end, he's got a chance to slip tumble in. What does he do? No, he'll try and beat a guy in the box rather than slip tumble when the Rangers defence is turned. It's a simple pass for him. But again, it's all about Eddie. So for me, I mean, if either of those two in the hoops again, it looks like Chris is off. Is John Joe sure enough that we want to keep him? I don't think so. I think, there's been so Moy, do we keep him for 5 million? Scored a lot of goals, but doesn't really turn up. I said, as soon as Rangers got to 2-0, they weren't chasing for a third. We might have been getting chances, but Rangers didn't really chase for a third. You could see, that Diego needed hooked about 20 minutes into the game. It takes the half time to do that. Yep. We're chatting that just at half time going, go 4-4-2, get Griff on. Subs made 20-25 minutes too late. It's poor. From a lot of players, and Kennedy, I don't think he's done himself any favours. He's not particularly tried anything that can see that any of us couldn't have predicted kind of 20 minutes earlier than he done it. And we're amateurs. That guy's meant to be a professional, and I can't see the changes for. It takes him 20 minutes longer to see the changes.
It's been a mark of Celtic all season, I think, Lawrence, and Aero 250 comes in on a positive note. Things can't get much worse, can they? Well, I would answer that question and say yes, all depending on the managerial situation. Laura, I'm going to come to yourself. You've been waiting patiently, as is Kevin McCluskey down the bottom of the screen. Next week we were going to be hopefully buoyed by a result today. Next week has to be the week, doesn't it? It really does have to be the week after everything. And I'm using this in the context of football. All the suffering of Celtic fans this season, and I don't mean suffering in terms of world famine or anything else that anyone's going through, but in terms of football, we need a pick-me-up, we need an announcement, and it has to happen this week. If it happens this week, will it be a positive? Will it be positive enough? Are we going to get the man we all want?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I think the thing that was running through my head watching that game was we've all, some of us for less parts of the season, some of us for more, but we've all been coming on to this platform in front of thousands of people, making statements, saying things about this team that they then go on and prove you wrong about. Obviously, I mean, Laxalt, there's a lot of people who will have said they wanted Moy last week, who will be looking at that this week and thinking he's probably not worth keeping. The one thing that you can say right now is, with Lennon, with Kennedy, you can't trust either of them, and you can't trust any of the players to go out and put a performance in that you can rely on. Somebody said it before the game started. I think it was Kevin said before the game started that before, when you talked about if so-and-so turns up, we'll play well, if so-and-so turns up, and you never used to have to question that. It's gone even opposite way now, where you're thinking, I hope they turn up, because you can't guarantee it with any of them. But yeah, as for this week, if there isn't an announcement by the end of the week regarding manager or director of football, at least I'll be very concerned about where we're headed.
Yeah, Jungle Line comes in, he shares your views. If Desmond can't see what's in front of him, Celtic are in big trouble, and there are going to be a lot of unhappy Celtic supporters if that renewal form does hit the mat, and it's got a couple of signatures on it that we don't want to see. Now, when you're looking at the comments on A Celtic State of Mind, it's sometimes so busy it's hard to keep an eye on the comments and obviously speak to all the contributors. But here's one that ordinarily I would ignore. Taxi DMAC 56 on the way. The reason I'm bringing this up, Kevin, because I like to throw Kevin McCluskey a wee curveball here and there. You look at that situation at Celtic, as Lauren said, we've got 4 loanees, 3 of whom started today. We've got a number of loanees out the door who may or may not come back and be part of a squad to be assessed. We've got a number of players who are going to be leaving Celtic. I mean, in that particular episode that I covered, it was upwards of 12, as many as 15 or 16 players leaving Celtic. That's incredible. That's the whole magnitude of the challenge facing any Celtic manager coming in. How long is this going to take to rebuild, is my question, Kevin, because obviously you've got Rangers fans now looking forward to next season thinking, right, that pendulum is now swinging in our direction. We're the dominant force in Scottish football. How long is it going to take for Celtic to wrestle that back when you look at the challenge ahead for any new gaffer coming in?
Well, I think when you look at the magnitude of that the development that's going to have to take place, like you're saying, maybe 12, 15 players out, you're going to have to replace them, bring them in. It's not an overnight job. I think we could be looking at 2 or 3 years to rebuild, it's embarrassing considering that we've had 10 years to be in a far better position than we're in just now. 10 years when we should have been building for today. But yeah, I think it could be a 2 or 3 year rebuild job. But on that one of the 56 on the way, is it not just 2 that would be on the way?
Oh, didn't go there, mate. Jesus, didn't go there.
That's for all the folk with battle fever who are tuning in, Kevin. I'm going to come to yourself, Anthony Haggerty. You're very thoughtful. You're very thoughtful about your football, Tony, and often you can put that into words like very few others can. It's also given me an opportunity to bring up the Dude Abides, because he does have the best avatar on YouTube. But he's asking a question, what's happened to Calmac? And it's a question that a lot of Celtic fans have been asking all season. I mean, this isn't the player that we have become accustomed to, is it? The performances that McGregor's been putting in this season have been far from his vintage.
We touched upon this a couple of weeks ago in the pod, didn't we? That Calmac has played an extraordinary amount of football in the last, 4 years possibly, and include international football in that as well. I mean, is it possible that he's jaded, burnt out? But certainly this season he's regressed, and he's not the natural successor to Scott Brown as captain of Celtic Football Club. That we know for sure. I think Calmac just needs to... Do you know what? And it wouldn't surprise me if Calmac left as well in the summer. I know Brendan Rodgers still likes him, doesn't he, as a footballer? And see if somebody was to come in and test the waters for a bid for Calmac might actually fancy going elsewhere. So I'm not saying I want it to happen or it will happen, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did. because maybe Cal Mack's just had enough as well. You know, just you expect more from Cal Mack, and that's the thing. You expect a hell of a lot more from Cal Mack. But this season, when it mattered most, even Callum McGregor's not been able to dig out a hole. And Laura touched on it as well. That Malays is set in with far too many players, arguably every one of them. They've regressed because they've not been coached properly this season of all seasons. And part of that's maybe down to Neil Lennon and the man Neil Lennon that left earlier in the season. But would a new manager coming in get the best out of them again? Probably. But you just don't trust them. You just don't trust them to turn up now on any occasion. Not even on the big occasion, on any occasion. And Cal Mack's another one that's been dragged down by the Malays that's affecting the club, that it's malfunctioning at every level. And you just hope tomorrow it starts to function and get kick-started and go the right way. But this is massive. This rebuild's massive. And any manager coming in will soon realise that. Within 10 minutes of walking in the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Kevin Graham, I always go back to a comment that was made to me by an ex-player who spoke about losing that momentum. I think that's exactly what's happened to Callum McGregor, be that due to the fact that perhaps the coaching wasn't up to what he would have expected, or the mood or the culture of the club was different to what it had been before, but it certainly affected Callum McGregor. But what this ex-player told me, it was like putting your car and pulling the handbrake on a steep hill, trying to get it started again. And that's how difficult it is to get going again. If you've been on a run of form and you've got that momentum and it hits a brick wall, to get started again, that's my biggest concern. Now, I did make the point very, very early on after Neil Lennon came in that Callum McGregor had never played a game of football under Neil Lennon in Celtic's first team, because obviously that coincided with his move to Notts County earlier in his career. And I wondered, and I did wonder, and it's not an opportunity here for me to kick Neil Lennon. Tony's brought Lenny up, and I'm going to go forward with that thought process. And I did wonder at the time if it was a good meeting of minds, if you like, between McGregor and Lennon. And I also think that the other player that's quite obvious, there's been quite a lot who have regressed. The other one that was quite obvious to me, who didn't play much football in the first time that Lenny was in charge, was Tom Rogic. And both of those players, I think if Rogic left the building this summer, there wouldn't be many tears shed for him. Everything's happened in the past. It's certainly not happened this season. McGregor, for me though, I don't think he's a captain, Kevin, but he certainly has regressed. When that happens, do you need a manager of the stature of a Martin O'Neill or a Brendan Rodgers to come in to kick-start the career of someone like Callum McGregor and others?
Well, it's an interesting point that you do make. I see a team that's completely devoid of confidence. It's a team that there is talent there. You've got some of them who have checked out and other ones who are just having a crisis of confidence. So whoever the new manager is going to be, that's the first thing he's got to address, is that confidence. And I would fully expect whoever the manager is to come in, and his first phone call would be to somebody like Callum McGregor, who's going to be one of the more experienced players there hopefully next season. It will be to James Forrest, and it's about changing the culture that Callum's been used to. Just to go back, he says, where did it all go wrong? It went all wrong when we got fat, lazy and arrogant on the 25th of May 2019. And the whole, we just appointed somebody in the showers. That whole narrative showed we were fat, lazy and arrogant at that point. And that comes from the top. And I think you can actually see that in the performances since that point. And we're talking about this season's been an utter disaster. It's never started. But I'm not as down as what some people... Callum McGregor, Scott Brown, the majority of that team that's been there for the 4 trebles owe me nothing. Actually, owe me nothing. I can't be really too disappointed with them, because they've gave us some great days, nights over the last 4 seasons. It's come to an end. A new man's coming in, but I just hope the new man comes in and gets the confidence of these players who are talented and takes us forward. And however, as long as they sell the rebuild right, I'm right behind it. If that means losing a league next year, it means losing a league next year. But for me, it's always Europe. If they aim for Europe, the domestic tie will take care of itself. But we've been absolutely schooled today by a team that plays with a certain style, is well coached, and I've got confidence.
Well, when you're looking at the confidence aspect of that, Lawrence Conley, we do seem devoid of that. Some people say we're devoid of ability. Kevin used strong words. I remember them being uttered on this very podcast earlier in the season, and there was a huge backlash that Celtic have become fat, lazy and arrogant. The arrogance, I think we kind of touched on this, didn't we, when we were talking about the domination and people being quite happy and comfortable being the dominant force, whereas others prefer to be the underdog. Do you think that arrogance set in? I mean, listen, we enjoyed it, didn't we? We lauded it when we were dominating Scottish football and when we were humping Rangers at home and away. We lauded it. But at the time, I'm thinking, well, that's your right. I mean, that's what you do because you're the better team. But is that arrogance? Is that something that's come back to bite us, or is it two completely separate things entirely for you, Lawrence?
I don't think they're separate. I mean, Jock Stein touched on it before. One of his quotes, one of his hardest jobs was convincing the team that they could be beaten on their day. You look at us, we've been beaten a number of times this season, and I think some of the players just think, we just come up and we win. And you're going, there just seems to be a divide where what's happening in reality. They're thinking, well, we've been winning them for 4 years. Well, we've lost another game. You know what? We'll be all right next game. There doesn't seem to be the effort and application. Tony touched on it before the game kicked off. We need commitment. Who in the park showed commitment today? Taylor? Who else? Where was commitment from your players?
I think Taylor done well when he came on. I thought the two centre halves were fine. I actually thought Moy was okay as well, but all the rest of them had absolutely Turnbull as well. Did I say Turnbull? I can't remember. But all the rest of them had checked out. Bain done what Scott Bain does. He saved a couple of shots in the second half. But it's that second half summed up our season. It just summed up, nearly maybe if we can be arsed, we'll be arsed. And we've never been arsed all season, and fair play, we've probably got what we deserved. Actually, we have got what we've deserved this season. The club, there's certain people in the club have got what they've deserved this season. Just because of poor decision making. And it's not just poor decision making on the 25th of May 2019. It's been poor decision making going right back to when Neil Lennon was appointed the first time. Then running with an unofficial director of football, appointing Ronnie Dyler, chasing Brendan Rodgers out the door. There's a whole list of litanies of crimes of people in Celtic Football Club that's got to this point. As I say, the players have been fantastic for me. I've got no gripe with certain players. They've just been caught up in an absolute shitstorm this season. Some of them can go with my best wishes. Other ones I won't bother if I actually ever see them again.
JP, I'm going to come to yourself. It seems like a while since I spoke to you today. So we're looking at this rebuild, and I think that we are in a situation where you look at that team there just now and you think, well, as I said at the beginning of the game, once the loanees go back, we've got one right back, we've got two left backs, we've got three centre halves if Aya leaves. If you're replacing them with quality, I mean, what does quality cost? Because, I mean, we made a substitution today and on comes Ayeti and he cost £5 million. The goalkeeper who was sitting on the bench that we brought in, Greek internationalist, he cost £5 million. Is that the kind of quality are we looking for? Are we looking for players who are going to be in a higher bracket than that? And if we need half a dozen, 8, 10 of these players, are Celtic going to make that commitment?
I mean, I think we need to be looking at exploiting the sort of transfer rules that we did to get Moussa Dembele. When we had to just shell out whatever it was, 500,000, like a nominal fee. Is there some sort of cross-border transfer embargo? I can't remember the full rhetoric of it, but we need to be looking at that because we don't have money to go and shell out 5, 6, 7 million in each position. Surely we don't. I mean, unless somebody's got access to a treasure trove that I've not heard about, but I don't think we've got the ability to do that. John Joe Kenny's apparently on something like 15 grand a week at Everton, and I was texting somebody throughout the game saying, he should probably enjoy that while he can, because he's unlikely to get a contract like that again.
You know who he reminds me of, JP? He reminds me of Adam Matthews.
Adam Matthews was a better player.
Adam Matthews could play football.
Adam Matthews was better.
There you go then.
Looks wise, and at the level he's played at, perhaps. But I mean, today was really lost. I mean, if there'd been a full house in there today, I dread to think how much worse it could have got for him with that kind of pressure right in his face.
Here's a question for you then, JP. If we were to buy him, and I don't think we should, what transfer fee are we talking for John Joe Kenny? This is the whole magnitude of the problem we have at the moment. How much would it take to bring in a player like John Joe Kenny?
Well, I mean, if he's on 15 grand a week, you're probably talking 4 or 5 million quid.
Easy.
And that's insane.
Stop him from coming.
Listen, how much the Taylor cost us? He's a better fullback than Kenny. So
I agree with that.
Are out if we get our recruitment right. You don't need to shop in the EPL. You know,
two bottles of ginger and a sherbet dab.
And you're still overpriced.
But even then, Lawrence, and I agree with that. I think that it's all about the recruitment. Absolutely is all about the recruitment. But a manager like Eddie Howe coming in, I guess Anthony will be looking for huge assurances when it comes to the transfer kitty. And a lot of that will be made up, I guess, of players on their way out. I mean, the club are going to have to find investment, and we've said before that, they have, behind it or in the corridors of Celtic Park been talking about a vast investment. But a big part of that is going to be in players leaving the club.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we're all divided about El Yunusi. I think if you're spending 5 million quid, you want a finished article or as close as damn it. El Yunusi to me is just, I touched on it on Friday. That's why he's not worth 5 million quid. He turned up today. Yeah, I don't want a guy to score against Livingston and think everything's hunky-dory. I want to score against Rangers. You know what I mean? People say, he's got 17 goals this season. Great. Who's he scored against? Tell me, someone of repute that he scored against, maybe a couple in Europe.
Rangers.
He did score last game against Rangers.
Right, one each. Didn't he win? I want to score when it matters, when we win.
I want to see Moy in a team that's confident and plays is playing with confidence and playing with verve and playing with and
would you spend 5 million quid on him?
Yes.
Which would be a big chunk of your manager's budget. You would.
Well, you're basically looking to replace Eddie. So say whatever we get for Eddie, you spend on Moy.
El Yunusi is not replacing Eddie. I guarantee that.
Well, listen, I could have replaced Eddie this season. He's been that poor and that half-hearted about everything he does. That's got a huge knock on the whole team. Whether it's Moy, your midfielders, you don't have a boy to lead the line. You don't have a guy showing a desire. I mean, honestly, about 10 minutes to go, he's got a chance to slip tumble on and turn the Rangers defence, and Eddie decides, no, I'll try and take it round this boy. It's just basics. It's all about Eddie.
We've seen that all season, Lawrence, haven't we? Now, Kev, I turned round to Kevin. The chance that he misses, right? And I think Kev was being very generous in saying, he couldn't do anything else. Laura Bradburn, I'll come to you. Does this come into the kind of arrogance that Kevin was talking about earlier? He's put his heel on it. I think he could have wrapped his leg around that, and it's a certain goal. I mean, just do the simple things and get it done.
The thing that it reminded me of is the kind of risk you take when you take a Panenka for a penalty. You get it wrong and you make yourself look like an absolute idiot. And that's bad enough in a situation where you are a couple of goals ahead and you are on easy street. The fact that he didn't put his laces through that to get us back in the game, get us one goal behind, I'll never understand. And he looked shocked that it didn't go in. I don't know how you can be shocked it's not gone in, because I don't see, even as a professional footballer as he is, I don't see how he could feel that he had enough control over the direction of the ball, the way it was coming into him, and the bit of his foot that he chose to hit it with. You're not entirely sure unless you've practiced that a few times in a row where it's going to go, so you can't be shocked if it then goes over the bar. It spoke to me of an attitude of that he was more concerned about the other thing is, even if it had gone in and that's classy, that's Eddie, we were still 2-1 down. it meant absolutely nothing, and it just smacked to me of somebody who didn't care either way, was kind of only out for himself today, and it's probably an attitude that is more of an issue throughout the squad than just him as well.
How can you showboat at 2-0 down? How can you showboat at 2-0 down and not get it right? That's everything to do with attitude. And Eddie just thinking, well, didn't go in.
What you're meant to do is batter it into the net, grab the ball and take it back to the centre spot.
Correct, exactly, Laura. That's exactly what you're meant to do. But first and foremost, get it in the net. Showboating at 2 down. It's unforgivable.
Sorry, Tony.
Losing money on Eddie. Get a fact.
What went through Eddie's head was, this is going to look great on my showreel. When I dare I say, and that's been. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's probably been living out of boxes for the last 6 months, waiting on the move. He's probably picking one dish every night to go and cook his pasta out of a box and putting it back in the box, hoping he's getting a move.
He's not crapping himself in the bath, though.
No, you're right, Laura. That was a good retort. Well done. Jungle Lion, welcome back to the show, sir, and we look forward to doing this show live from your hut. This season is a perfect storm. We've said that a few times, Kevin McCluskey. We are now in a season that we haven't won a trophy, and that's the first time since 2010. So sum it up for us, Kevin. Where do we go from here? I've been saving all the big ones for you, pal.
Cheers. Where do we go from here? I don't know. We need to take stock, I think, big time. We've got 2 massive appointments that we need to get right, if it's a director of football and manager or head coach. So they're just two big appointments we've just got to get right. We've got to spend the time on getting them right if we haven't already done so in the background. And then, as I say, I think it's a 2 or 3 year rebuild job on the team, because there's going to be a massive turnover of players. I don't think we can really expect that to all gel for next season. So probably from the fan perspective, we're going to have to take a bit of stock. Maybe, I don't know if lowering our expectations is the right word or the right phrase, but we're going to have to be prepared that we're not going to dominate for the next couple of seasons. But I think, as Kevin said before, if we've got faith that the rebuild is on the right path, that's what we need from the board and from the club right now.
Paul, see, as a compare and contrast exercise, Rangers announced Steven Gerrard on the Monday after Celtic had scudded them 5-0 at Parkhead, when we're probably at one of the lowest ebbs, and Rangers said that their new manager was going to be Steven Gerrard on the Monday, and gave everybody hope, or every Rangers supporter hope moving forward. Now, Celtic should do the same thing, because this is probably, as you've just touched on, the lowest ebb for 10 years. So Celtic really need to come out tomorrow swinging.
20.
Dominic Mackay, new manager, is going to be this guy, or new DOF, and give the supporters hope moving forward. And because I remember that when all the Celtic supporters were celebrating under Brendan Rodgers when they won 5-0 at Parkhead and clinched the title, and Rangers did that, and a lot of them were like buoyed by that. They said that Gerrard would be the man, and yada yada yada. So I think Celtic have to do something similar, because it's the only way they're going to offer people hope moving forward.
Tony, the thing I would say in response to that is, what did we do the last time we needed a lift? We just said that we're sticking with the guy we've got.
Yeah, I know that. I'm not talking about sticking with the guy you've got. I'm talking about giving people a major lift, and I think that's what Celtic have to do.
I'm just saying we haven't got a track record of doing anything to give the supporters a major lift.
No, well, it's a new era, supposedly. They're going to have to. Because Kennedy won't fly at all. I mean,
look at the European League that's been announced.
Sorry, Lawrence, when you go.
When you're talking about new era, look at the European League that's been announced. Obviously, Derek pulled out the Atlantic League. Probably there's something going on in the background that we should be getting involved with, and I think Derek will be getting involved in. Paul said there's talk of big investment at Celtic Park. The only thing that would make big investment sense is if you're moving to something like a European League, because I can't see us splashing out huge to stay in Scotland. I just can't see it.
For me, this season has now crept into the 2000 season territory, and look, we had chances today. We can't gloss over that fact. We're all hurting different levels of grief and all of that rubbish. But we had a lot of chances today. We're managed by three stooges. We've got a team that the majority of them's actually checked out, and we still miss 6 sitters. So for me, decent manager comes in the summer, and we could actually replicate what Martin O'Neill done if we get the appointment right. There we go, I've says it. Positive. This is 2000 all again.
Right, okay, I can live with that, Kevin. We've had 7 contributors today, all magnificent. Thanks everybody for getting involved in the comment section, and that was on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. If you haven't done so already, click that subscribe button and get involved on a daily basis. We'll be back tomorrow. Kevin Graham and Russell Boyce will be joined by none other than the man below me here, Anthony Haggerty. Tune in at 12:30 for the Bulletin tomorrow, and thanks everybody for getting involved in a Celtic State of Mind.